Muslims who asks for advice, so to speak. And waswas or whispering is often here related to ritual purification, and especially the fear that many Muslims have that they are not doing the right things, that they have not conducted, for example, the ablution properly, the ghusl or the wudu, that they have done it correctly. So many is causing doubt. So in this tradition, it is often, or in this literary genre, it is often that this doubt is related to the whispering. It is the devil, the waswas, who whispers or plants doubt in your mind that maybe you have not done it correctly. And this is, of course, extremely important. When I wrote this article some years back, Salafism was not as prominent as it is today. And here you can see, for example, that a lot of people who are more closely to Salafi interpretation, where it become ritualization is so important of conducting or behave in a proper way. So in the fatwas that I quote in this text, you can see that theologians often stress that no, you should not worry about these things. So they try to give some calm or relief to the Muslims who ask these kinds of questions, because the persons they are doing too, they are using it, they are stressing the need to follow some kind of Islamic way proper. For example, when doing the wudu, did I actually clean myself properly? Or did I miss a spot here or there? So the theologians that I quote in this text say that no, you should not worry about that, because if you have the intention, the niyyah, to do the wudu, that is good enough. So God will know that you have tried your best to do the cleansing, so to speak. So that's another way of talking about the waswas. And also in rituals, you can also see that some of you might know it, that if you observe Muslims praying in a mosque or in another place, they are often using their index fingers to, what is said, whipping Satan with it, just to ward off the evil forces. And these kinds of protections are very, very interesting. And that's another topic, Abla, that I think that scholars should address more. For example, the dua, the function of dua, individual prayer, is really an understudied topic. Not only in kind of Islamic history or Islamic traditions, that you have the dua, you have the salat, and you have the dua, the individual prayer that is not related to the time slots of praying. But the dua, you have first of all books for different kinds of dua, if you are traveling or if you're sick or etc., all these kinds of things. But it would be extremely interesting to do field work, for example, of how do Muslims use dua in their ordinary life. For example, when you are preparing for exam, if some of you are Muslims, you are saying a dua in order to gain strength and confidence in order to pass this test. Or if you have children, you are worried about them, you do dua for them and you pray for your children. All of these kinds of what can be labeled, which is very difficult, but can be labeled as folk Islamic tradition, is often understudied, because most scholars of religion, they have tended to look into how the so-called educated or the high forms of Islam are being expressed. And that is a serious problem, I think. Not the least also individuals with a Islamic or Muslim cultural background, for example in Sweden, they can also not being religious in the sense that they go to mosque or they don't care about what kind of food they eat, etc. But if they get sick, or when people die, they stick to some of these traditions, as people as compared to there, you have to remember that there is a huge difference between religiosity in Sweden and in the America, and that is maybe something we can discuss later, because Sweden is an exceptional case in that sense. So just to wrap it up and to end it and open up for the important thing, your comments and your questions, not me talking to you. So in this paper, I tried to address sound and in relation to silence, noise, and also the division between that, and how whispering can be seen as a kind of in-between position, and that it is also related to some negative aspect, like this sound of Satan and so forth. So sound in an Islamic tradition can both be associated with something good, but also something bad. So in the final point here is how to explain the nexus between sound and noise in religious studies. So you can see it from a kind of psychological perspective, that these kinds of questions has an importance for the individual, but it can also have an importance in the social dimension within the society. The differentiation between time, for example, between the adhan and the non-adhan times, non-mosque time, so to speak, non-prayer time. So it's a division of time, but it can also have different functions of music and sound in different places. It's also interesting to see how these developed over time. For example, when jazz music came around, a lot of Christian groups in both Europe and in America said that jazz was something negative, something dangerous, something related also to race and color. But then it was appropriated by other people, and today it is often viewed as a form of highbrow art in a sense. So you can see how that changes over time. But also, which I didn't develop in the paper, is the natural explanations. So in religious history, it is argued that if you look to these aspects from a more kind of cognitive aspect, or even neuroscience, like brain studies and stuff like that, you can see that we as humans, we have a drive for explanations. We need to have some kind of explanation. So if we hear something that is not possible to explain, we often make the inference that this is something related to another world, or the divinity, or something positive or something negative. And this is important to remember, that the function of sound and like heat and cold in the Quran, for example, or in the Bible or in other traditions, is very much related to the fact that the Quran was a text that was revealed in a desert. It was a hot, dry climate in general. So wind can both be associated with something negative. It is a hot, the Sahara wind that can be killing you. A sandstorm can kill you, but the wind can also be soothing and calming. It can be like having the difference between having an air condition or not, in that sense. So heat and temperature is also important to study here. And of course, the difference when we talk about sound, living in a city like New York or Los Angeles or Lincoln, Nebraska, is very much different from like the Mecca and Medina of the 7th century, or in Old Norse mythology, living in Sweden somewhere. So that is also important. If you live in a big city, sound will be something completely different. So you have the whole ambiance of the city. But if you go to the countryside, you can hear these not hearing something. It can be soothing and calming, but it can also be worrying to hear something that you can't say what it is. And that is maybe an explanation why we as humans have this drive to come up with the idea that this must be related to something of an other world. And also, as humans, it is very important to be sound and to be sure, and it's better to be safe than sorry, as we say. For example, if you are walking out in the woods and you hear like a breech creaking, or you hear a sound in the bushes, there's somebody moving in the bushes. As big city folks, we are not seldom afraid when we hear these kind of noises. But in old times, it could be the difference. If we are running away, we are fleeing from these sounds, it can be the thing that saves us. And if we are not afraid, we approach this sound, and it might be a grizzly bear or something like that, or a rattlesnake or something like that. So we have these natural ways of explaining it. And that was not a part of this paper, and that is maybe something we can end this presentation and maybe also end my talk, and now open up for the comment and feedback, and of course also critique.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Larsson, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today, and for the wonderful conversation on the sound of Satan, different aspects of whispering in Islamic theology, a paper published 2012. I got a disconnection in the recording, but I'm happy it didn't disrupt our conversation. So now it's going to be time for questions after I pause the recording. But before we disconnect the recording with you, Dr. Larsson, a quick update to share about your current projects, future projects, papers. Please share with us.
Well, yeah. When I signed up as the deputy dean, I had the fear that I would be soaked in admin questions. So I decided to at least have one kind of fun project to lean back on in hard times. So for the last 4 years, I have been writing a biography of a historian of religion in Sweden, and a former professor from the University of Uppsala. And his name is Georg Widengren, and I will hopefully before Christmas publish an edited volume with Brill on that, and then I also I have been part of a project on Islamic finance and exclusion in the Nordic countries, and there is some paper coming out from that, a special issue for hopefully, and then we have one one paper on how the police force in the city of Gothenburg understood the development that people left Gothenburg to go to Syria and Iraq from 2012 and 2015. It was I don't know if you know about that, but from a European point of view, in Sweden we are approximately 10 million people in Sweden, and around 300 individuals left from Sweden. So if you compare Europe per capita, Sweden was the second country of having people going from Sweden to join the Islamic State. As the only country in Europe that had more people per capita was Belgium, but Sweden was the second country. So it's a big question for in Sweden to understand why was it so. And also now we have a very heated political discussion, but also a situation when people are returning to Sweden. Most of them have died, but some are also returning to Sweden. And also women with children born in Syria and Iraq, and how to handle these questions. So there are some texts coming out on that too.
Best of luck, Dr. Larsson. Very important projects. We look forward updates from you as well. Thank you so much for joining us in Global Islam Current Debates here at Nebraska University. Thank you so much.